This is the 575 right angle attachment, and it changes the working position of the Dremel 90 degrees. The main advantage you get from this is that you can work with the Dremel in tighter spaces where you normally would not be able to reach. But there are some other advantages that I will show you later. Let's first check out the different parts of the attachment. These are the main parts you get with this attachment. The grey nut replaces the collet nut that sits on your Dremel. Hold the shaft lock button, screw it on and tighten it slightly with the small wrench. The attachment is then secured to the Dremel. There is a square steel wire that has to fit into the square slot in the grey collet nut. Now we can screw on the attachment onto the threads on the front of the Dremel. When the attachment is secured, we can change the position of the attachment to where we want it. I like to have it at a 90-degree angle compared to the top of the tool. But you have to line up the square wire with the square hole in the grey collet nut, or else it will not sit in the position that you want to. This can be a little bit tricky the first few times, but the trick is to turn the black collet nut on the front of the attachment so it lines up with the grey collet nut in the position you want it. To secure the bit, we use a standard 1/8" collet and collet nut. We use the shank of another bit and put it through this hole to lock the shaft. This will act as our shaft lock button. Now we can change the bit and loosen and tighten the collet nut. It is not recommended to use the shaft lock button on the Dremel to change bit with this attachment. It causes too much strain on the attachment and the tool. So what can we use the right angle attachment for? It is great to use when working in tight spaces. Let's say I need to cut a tight screw like this one with a Dremel. I would have a really hard time to get a clean cut when using the Dremel 8220 without the right angle attachment. You have to cut at an angle and it's just an awkward cutting position. This also makes it less safe. When I use the right angle attachment, I can make a straight cut without any problems. It is also easy to do a clean cut close to the wall. It also works great when cutting a pipe. In this case, it's a PVC pipe that runs through the studs in a wall. Another good example is when you want to drill a hole where you can't get access with your drill. A common place is inside a small drawer or cabinet. A Dremel with the right angle attachment will be able to drill small holes in smaller spaces than most cordless drills will be able to. And it makes it easier to drill straight without drilling at an angle. But I have to mention that the largest drill bit a Dremel can use is the 1/8" drill bit. With the right angle attachment, you can reverse the cutting direction. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I want to make a cut into this screw, I just start cutting right. When I cut into the screw with the right angle attachment in this position, the sparks flies right into my hands. No big problem, I can just put on gloves. But what I also can do is to rotate the Dremel 180 degrees. Now the sparks will fly out the other way. But you need to be very careful when using this method. If you get a kickback while cutting in reverse like this, the tool will be pushed towards you. So only do this for lighter cuts, and only if you're comfortable with it. You are in charge of your own safety here. And of course, always wear your safety goggles when using a Dremel. The right angle attachment makes it easier to make straight cuts on flat surfaces. This is very helpful if you're going to cut into thin plywood or metal sheets. If I want to cut a straight line in the center of this plywood with my Dremel 8220, it would be hard to make a straight cut because the tool is wider than the bit that is cutting. So I would have to make a slanted cut and it would not look very good. With the right angle attachment, the cutting head will have more space and it will be easier to make a more accurate cut. You also get more visibility of the line that you're cutting. In many cases, it is easier to make a flush cut with the right angle attachment. This will of course depend on what and where you're cutting. However, it would be able to make similar cuts to an oscillating multi-tool. Just not as clean and efficient. But if a Dremel is what you have, it would be able to do the job. The one downside of making flush cuts with a Dremel is that most bits are not completely flat at the front. There are most of the time some protruding parts, and these will leave marks in the material. There's also a few not so good things that you might experience with this attachment that you should know about. In general, the build quality of this attachment feels solid, but when in use it will vibrate a little bit more compared to when you're only using the Dremel. Now, it's not a very strong vibration, but you will hear it and you will feel it. Another problem that I've seen people having is that the gears inside the attachment that transfers the energy to the shaft will overheat, either because of too much friction or too little lubrication. But I have not had this problem myself, so I cannot say if this is common. All in all, I really like this attachment and I find myself using it a lot. That's all, see you next time.